A few years ago, a product came out that I was very excited about, and it's called the Steam Deck. I've got one right here, as you can see. It's in a little bit of a case, and the reason is because I needed a kickstand, and it really frustrates me. One of the most annoying things about the Steam Deck is that it doesn't have a kickstand. But I think that's where we should start, and it's that I often look at the flaws of the Steam Deck, and I don't really focus on really what makes it great, which is the opposite of how I treated the PS Vita. You know, the PS Vita, a lot of people came at it from the angle of, it's just not going to win out against the 3DS. It really just doesn't have the games that the 3DS has. It really isn't getting the support that we know it kind of deserves. In the end, basically we didn't get Monster Hunter on the PS Vita. Like if we had had a proper Monster Hunter game on the PS Vita that wasn't just Monster Hunter Frontier G or whatever it was that they gave us, I think people looked at the flaws of the PS Vita instead of, what made the PS Vita great. And for me, I was really into Project Diva and just all the games that were coming out in Japan, because Japan had a lot of support for the PS Vita. A bit like how Japan had a lot of support for the mini disc and Sony. Well, okay, that's another story. The topic we're here to talk about today, though, is the Steam Deck. I kind of feel like I didn't give it a fair shake. Right after I bought the Steam Deck, I was sent an Asus ROG Ally, the white one. And then after that, I had this one, the Aya Neo Air 1S. And then after that, I reviewed the Asus ROG Ally X. Before the Steam Deck came out, we really didn't have that many handhelds out there. Apart from the Aya Neo, I had that very first one. Do you guys remember? It was the GPD Pocket. I had the GPD Pocket, which was more like a laptop. And it had a good enough processor in it that it could kind of run games, but the onboard graphics was not really as good as having a discrete graphics card. After the Steam Deck, we got all of these really awesome products, and they were Windows-based. And in my opinion, that was an upgrade over the Steam Deck. That was a good enough reason to not need the Steam Deck anymore. As I felt like the Steam Deck not having Windows was just kind of like, to get past the whole Windows thing, and then they could kind of, get the graphics to run well with good battery life. But I felt like with the Asus ROG Ally X, the battery life was good enough that it didn't really matter that it was running Windows and wasn't as efficient as a Steam Deck, because the battery is a little bit bigger, so now it just runs longer, and now I can just play games as Windows games. I don't need to worry about whether they're running on Linux the way that everything is done through. I think it's not. Is it called Proton? Vulkan? Is this a water break episode? Not sure, but I am drinking water. And so basically, for years, I've had this in my house, and I do use it sometimes, but only because I have it. Kind of like, well, I put the money in and I bought one, so if I don't play it, it would be a waste. And also, like, I think batteries, it's important to run the battery down on something so that it doesn't crystallize and become unusable. The Steam Deck has two main benefits over Windows handhelds that I didn't appreciate as much as I should have. The first one is the fact that it doesn't run Windows. Windows is such a headache. People will basically say, like, listen, if you set up your games properly, it shouldn't be a problem. But that it just does not change the fact that when you're playing on something like an ROG Ally, even though I think of the handhelds I've tried, I feel like the Asus does it the best. Sometimes that layer that they run is like the ROG Armory Crate layer. Sometimes it just doesn't react properly. It doesn't know if I should be in desktop mode or gamepad mode, so I'll have to press the button and manually switch. And even if I switch, sometimes my shortcuts, they just don't seem to work. Or like, I watched The Lord of the Rings and I was like, okay, I want to play a video game that makes me feel like I'm in Lord of the Rings, but not a Lord of the Rings video game. So I got out Skyrim, and I think that was pretty darn close. So I was getting ready to play Skyrim, and it was running in this window. Instead of a full screen game on the ROG Ally, imagine that's what I'm holding here. Instead, there was like this sub window, a 1080p window on a 1080p screen, but slightly shifted. And that was very, very frustrating. So I thought, I'll press Alt-Enter. In most PC games on Windows, that's what you do. That's how you make it run in full screen. But on the Ally, no keyboard. I found the keyboard shortcut. Eventually, that took me about 45 minutes because I had to open up the normal on-screen keyboard, didn't work. The shortcut just completely didn't work. Opened up the on-screen keyboard using Windows by going to the Start menu. That didn't work. And then I think I just realized there is no Alt key on some of the on-screen keyboards. There's no Alt key, so you can't Alt enter. Even the mouse wasn't working. Like the analog sticks can double as the mouse when you're in desktop mode. But again, the controller has to realize that you're in desktop mode. Anyway, turns out I needed a Windows update, and I mean, I know that Steam Deck has updates as well, but it's just really frustrating that sometimes just the analog sticks just don't respond at all. It's like it's as if there is no mouse. In theory, yeah, Windows handheld gaming shouldn't be a headache. If you set it up right, you should be able to have a smooth experience. But I'm pretty sure that 99.9% of people who actually buy a Windows handheld will at some point be in a situation where what happens to me happens to them as well. You get to the hotel, it's 9:30, everyone's gone to sleep, and you're like, okay, I'm going to play video games for about 2.5 hours, and then I'm going to conk out and fall asleep. What actually happens is you spend an hour and a half trying to work out why your game doesn't work, getting the drivers for your device, getting the Wi-Fi password from the hotel so that you can actually download these drivers, doing the BIOS update, which requires you to plug in the AC adapter, otherwise the BIOS update won't even initiate itself. And then by the time you actually figure out that really what you needed to do was go into the system.ini.sprefs file, manually change the text edit file. You know, there's one line that says like full screen 0. You have to change the 0 to a 1. By that point, you're just like, what is the point of Windows? Why do I have to go through this? Why didn't I just bring a gaming laptop with me? A thing that actually has a keyboard and a mouse attached to it. Which brings me on to the second reason why the Steam Deck is powerful. Not just because you can skip Windows entirely, but also because of these. Like I massively underestimated how powerful it is to have touchpads on this device. If I tried to use my Ally for things, it'd just be frustrating, because have you ever tried to use a touchscreen on a Windows? Like, have you ever had Windows 11 running on a 7-inch screen and you're trying to like tap like the X in the box and you're trying to like slide down the things? For me, it was really simple. I was trying to load up the CS Timer, which is it's like a Rubik's Cube website. I just brought up this website which has a scramble at the top. It's like, look how tiny everything is on this screen. Like there are no buttons on here that are designed to be touched with a finger. But that's not a problem, because I've got this touchpad, super easy to run it as a PC. It's not a Windows PC, but it doesn't matter. Most of the things you want to do on your computer probably don't need to be done on Windows. They just need to be done on the internet, in a browser somewhere. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing this topic up today is that I recently saw like a number of videos popping up online saying that actually, in 2025, Steam Deck is still an absolutely amazing purchase. And I think it's because it just went on sale. I think there's a $320 version of the LCD Steam Deck. For $320, it's a massive steal. And when you think about the fact that in the past 3 years, inflation has continued to rise. What is inflation? It's like 3 or 4% every year. For the Steam Deck to reduce in price, first of all, and then secondly, to be reduced in price 3 years after the price that it came out at, which has, in theory, should have increased because of inflation. Well, I think it's a pretty good deal. I don't know exactly which one I would recommend. It does depend. I think it's unlikely that you have a game that doesn't run on a Steam Deck. It's unlikely that you've got a game that needs to be played on Windows. But for example, I think there are some games out there. I haven't checked recently, but when Steam Deck came out, when the ROG Ally originally came out, I was playing a game called the Idolmaster Starlit Season. I think it was the first Idolmaster that you could get on Steam. And it really frustrated me that even though I could play it on Steam, I couldn't play it on my Steam Deck. I could only play it on my Windows handheld. And when I did play it on Steam Deck, I played it through Proton. And actually, it kind of worked for a little while. And then it just froze. And it was at a point that I hadn't saved the game already. I was like, well, that's frustrating. I've just lost, not 30 minutes of my life, but I'd lost 30 minutes of progress. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to play this on a Windows handheld. And then to just be safe, I'm just going to play everything on a Windows handheld. You can get yourself a Windows handheld, which is very favorable when compared to even like a gaming laptop because of how portable it is, the battery life, the grips, having the controller built in. You know, it's just like you want to show up at a hotel, you don't want to bring your gaming laptop with you, just bring your Asus Windows handheld or whatever, Iron Neo or whatever it is. And it seems like quite a good deal, but then you realize that the whole time you could have been playing on a device that's 720p, which is, let's face it, on a screen this small, most of the time you're far enough away that you don't really notice like the extra bump in pixels up to full HD. And you save so much money. So much money. Again, the base model now on sale for $319. And not only that, it's not just cheaper or like worse or anything, it's actually better. The experience of running games on Steam OS is really good. Really, really, really good. Like I press the Steam button and no matter what, that Steam menu opens up. I press the options button here on the side and no matter what, I can see my battery life, I can change my performance settings, I can restrict the FPS down to 40 FPS or whatever it is I need to do to like make my gaming experience better or smoother or last longer. All of that in addition to the fact that I also have touchpads. So I can actually use it like a mouse. I can actually go into desktop mode, open up a browser and do stuff that I could check my email here if I wanted to. I probably wouldn't type an email on my Steam Deck, but I could still do a lot of web browsing things. Like I don't have the YouTube app. Doesn't matter. I've got desktop mode. I can open up a browser and just use the YouTube website. It's so powerful. And I really basically, this video is an apology to my Steam Deck. I'm apologizing to a device. You know, when he says like, I'm losing to a rug, I'm apologizing to a hunk of metal, aluminium parts, transistors and things. And rightly so. I think I really haven't appreciated what the Steam Deck could do. And I was focused too hard on the benefits that came from the design of the Ally, you know, just like the shape of it, the extra battery life, the flexibility of using Windows and all that. But really, it comes back to the videos I made like 3 years ago before the Steam Deck came out. This was really redefining what PC gaming on a handheld could be, you know, by giving it a console style interface, but with all of the flexibility of Windows and maybe more because it's Linux based and not based on a Microsoft operating system. I'm sorry, Steam Deck. And you know what I might do instead? In order to really like go all the way with this experiment, I might follow up with a future video by only gaming on my Steam Deck instead of gaming on my Asus Ally, which will be difficult because when my games finally do run on the Ally, on the Ally X, it's amazing. The screen is beautiful. Like the flexibility of everything, like having, you know, I've got back, I know this has back buttons as well, but they're kind of weirdly shaped. You know, I love everything about the Ally X, but I feel like I owe it to my Steam Deck. I owe it to you to at least experiment to see with a device that came out like 3 years ago, but is now purchasable at a price of $320, which when you consider inflation is even less than it should be. They should be increasing the price. I'm not condoning increasing pricing, but when you think about inflation, the price probably should have gone up. But if anything, the price is going down. They're discounting it, which is phenomenal. I assume they're just losing money on that. And you're getting an incredible handheld gaming experience. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm gonna try and game as exclusively on my Steam Deck as possible. I mean, I'll play on my PC, but when I'm playing handheld, like sitting on the sofa playing, I'm gonna focus on what I can get out of the Steam Deck, and then maybe follow up with more opinions of just how good was it. Did it deliver on the promise that it sounds like I'm trying to convince you that actually you should just buy a Steam Deck. Was I right? Was I right in suggesting such a crazy thing? Anyway, 2025 hardware in this, as far as I'm aware, has not significantly changed since the original version came out. Pretty sure it's not faster or anything. I think they may have changed the battery life. And again, the OLED model came out, which I didn't purchase, but again, because I didn't feel like I really needed my Steam Deck anymore. Other things, I suppose, I don't actually know if the newer Steam Decks have a kickstand, but I really wish they did. I guess the issue is that the kickstand would be the first thing to break, so I understand why. I understand why they would shy away from putting a physical stand on the back, which could end up just breaking. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Just wanted to apologize to my Steam Deck and apologize to you for not giving the Steam Deck a proper shake, and it's because too many other flashy devices came out right after the Steam Deck, but I do feel like giving this another good shake and seeing how far I can push it, I think it deserves it. It really deserves it. When you look how thin this thing is, it's impressive. It is. I feel so bad. I feel so bad. That's all for today. Hope you've enjoyed this video. This has kind of been a water break episode. So if you enjoy these videos where I just ramble on and talk without really editing my thoughts at all and drink water at the same time, do look forward to future episodes. I've been NihongoGamer. I'll see you real soon.